For decades, economic growth in Maori communities has followed a predictable pattern. The prevailing narrative suggests that massive, top-down development projects, backed by Crown funding and wearing an iwi's name, provide the most stable path forward. We can test that theory by looking at a live case study in the coastal town of Ōpōtiki, Whakatoea Mussels Ōpōtiki Limited. This chart visualizes the scale of the government's promise. The Crown took a 38.21% ownership stake, promising to create 1,850 jobs for the local workforce. But the data shows a different reality. The factory delivered only 224 jobs, an 87.9% shortfall. The failures extended into the local environment. The factory unlawfully discharged wastewater directly into Ōpōtiki's Duke Street drain. It ran foul for weeks, killing native tuna, eels, driving one resident from his home and forcing a neighbor to sell their property. On this geometric scale, say how little the penalty mattered. The court fine was $135,000, paid to the Crown, not the affected neighbors. Against the $167.2 million public investment, that fine is a 0.08% rounding error. This reveals the flaw in the Crown equity model. In Te Maori, mana, the name and prestige, must travel alongside kawenga, the responsibility. When the government holds the capital offshore, but puts the local iwi's name on the building, they sever the name from the consequence. The community absorbs the reputational risk and the environmental cost, while the holding company easily absorbs the fine. What happens when a community rejects Crown equity to keep control of its own narrative? We see that taking shape just down the road. Here, a different approach to economic development is forming around Hiona St. Stephen's Anglican Church, an initiative built entirely on local governance. To understand exactly how this community-led model fixes the broken system we just looked at, we have to understand the violence and trauma embedded in the walls of this specific building. Above the door of Hiona St. Stephen's hangs a carved wooden pare showing two men pressing foreheads together, sharing breath. Those two men are Karl Volkner, a missionary who was killed inside this building in 1865, and Mokomoko, a rangatira, a Maori leader, who was wrongly executed at Mount Eden for that death a year later. The Crown used Volkner's death to justify immediate and brutal retaliation. Within months, they proclaimed the Raupatu, the forced confiscation of land. With a single order, they seized over 56,000 hectares of Wakatoa's most productive coastal plains, pushing the iwi onto harsh, unproductive reserves. Mokomoko waited 126 years to be pardoned. It took 147 years, until 2013, for Parliament to formally restore his mana. These wooden walls hold the weight of a century of silence and state-sanctioned theft, making Hiona a monument to unresolved grief. On August 6, 2026, 25 local residents gathered inside this church for a hui, a community meeting, to discuss how this space should move forward. The mandate they delivered was decisive. Every single person surveyed voted to proceed with developing a cultural heritage tour, built and owned by the community itself. The initiative draws its structure from the Boston Black Heritage Trail. In that model, the community maintains authority over the narrative footprint, preventing outside corporations from extracting and packaging the story for profit. To protect the project from exploitation, the organizers built in a structural defense mechanism. The initiative requires a binding legal governance structure to be formed with Te Wakatohe before any money moves or any tours begin. They also rejected fixed ticket prices, relying strictly on koha, a voluntary contribution. By operating on koha without corporate shareholding, they ensure the people making the decisions are the exact same people who live with the results. Their mana and responsibility stay locked together. We can see exactly why this level of protection is necessary by zooming out. Traditional Western urban planning frequently strips the cultural context from indigenous spaces, treating them purely as branding assets or scenery. Take Eden Park in Auckland. The government recently stripped resource consent requirements to allow 32 concerts a year. In doing so, they approved hundreds of hours of elevated noise limits over a site built on a wetland that fed and sheltered local hapu for over 1,000 years, without once acknowledging the land's true name, Na'anawai, in the official release. Or consider Mauau, Mount Maunganui. To Manawuna, the mountain is a sacred ancestor. but local planning treated it as rateable campground infrastructure. They ignored cultural warnings and unstable land until a catastrophic landslide at the base killed 6 people. When modern development treats a birthplace or a sacred mountain purely as infrastructure, it strips away the history that tells you how to treat the land safely. Back in Ōpōtiki, the slow, methodical approach at Hiona St. Stephen's offers a clear solution to these modern failures. This is what practical rangatiratanga, self-determination, looks like. It means the sacred site's own history dictates the pace of development. The timeline isn't set by a corporate tourism deadline. It is set by the people who inherited the story. Accountability requires establishing governance first. If you build the legal structure with the community before the capital flows, you guarantee that the people bearing the consequences of failure are the ones holding the pen. This kind of truth-telling requires independence. If you support Tikanga-led projects prioritizing people over press releases, consider offering a koha to the Maori Green Lantern. When a community funds its own truth, it proves it doesn't need crown equity to survive.